Let's get started with part 1 of the mystery crochet along for November of 2022. Now, if you're watching this past this time, that means you probably already know what the pattern is. But I designed the patterns differently this time. This time the pattern is easy to guess. However, we're using multiple different stitches throughout this pattern so that you can learn different types of stitches you may have never explored before. So it is a multi-stitch project, and today for part 1 you're learning already 2 different types of stitches. So are you ready? Make sure you grab your yarn and your hook, and we're starting with the dark color. So let's get started. For part 1, you're going to chain 31. I'm going to make it a little swatch so it's easier to see on camera. So I'm going to only do 11 here. So it's a little bit smaller, but it tells you exactly what to do. So you're just doing 31. I do 11. So once you have that, you're going to place single crochet stitches starting from the second chain from the hook into the back bump. So the back bump is simply, if you turn your chain around, you see that little bump. That's where you're going into, and that's where you're going to place your single crochet stitches. So simply 1 stitch per chain starting from the second chain from the hook. At the end of the row, you will have 30 stitches. For me, it's going to be 10. So the very first stitch that you're learning in this project is the thermal crochet stitch. So we're going to make it simple. We're not going in rounds. We're not doing circles. We're not doing increases or decreases. We're staying with the most basic version of this technique, and that is the single crochet version of the thermal crochet stitch. So you're going to chain 1, and now looking at your project, you're going to go through the back loop of the last stitch that you made and the parallel loop of the chain that you made in the beginning. Okay. So by the way, I'm using a darker yarn for the actual project, but it would not be visible on the camera. So I'm picking a lighter version of that same yarn. So right here is that back loop. So look at it from this perspective. So you can see this is the back loop. You're going through that, and you're going through the loop that is parallel, and that's part of the chain that you made. So you can see the chain is down there, and you go through those 2 parallel loops. Okay, so once you've done that, you yarn over and pull through, and then yarn over, pull through again. So you made your very first thermal crochet stitch as a single crochet stitch. So now you go to the next one. So the next one is here, and the parallel one is that one. So go through those 2 loops, back loop and the loop down there, yarn over and pull through, and then finish like a single crochet. Now do that for all the stitches until the end. Be aware it's sometimes hard to see the very last stitch, so I'll show you a close-up of that. So for the very last stitch, you're going to do exactly the same thing, but it may be harder to see. So here's the back loop, and then here's that parallel loop. So you go through that, yarn over and pull through, and then finish it up like a normal single crochet. You're at that point where you're really naturally turning it like I just did, right? You're going to chain 1. That chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, but it really does help you find your very last stitch once you go back. Now you're at the stage where you're going to crochet through the back loop of the stitch that you just made and through the leftover loop. So as you can see, we're only going through the back loop, but we're leaving the front loop left over. Well, we did that previously here too. So you're going to see those leftover loops over here. So we're going to use them now. So go through the back loop and now through the front loop, and then do exactly what you did before. Finish it up like a single crochet. So again, back loop, and a leftover loop, and single crochet. Back loop, leftover loop. You can call them front loop as well if you like, but I like to go with back loop and leftover loop, and do that all the way through the end. Once you reach the end, you're going to keep going with the same pattern until you have 5 rows on each side, which means you're going to see 10 rows. So let me be a little bit more clear. I'm going to show you an example of that. So this is the larger project that you are working on. So once you finish it, for the thermal crochet stitch, you have to count both sides. So let me use my hook and point to it. So you see those little bumps right here? Well, you're going to count those. So you're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. And once you see 5 on each side, you will have 10 rows, and that's what you want. However, the very last row is done differently. So the very last row, instead of going through the back bump and the leftover loop, you're actually going to go through both loops over here and the leftover loop. So you're going through 3 loops. So it would be like this. Okay? So you're going to yarn over and then finish it up like a normal single crochet. So you're going through both of the loops and the leftover loops. So 3 loops. That makes it a clean edge and looks similar to the bottom. So once you're done with your project, you can see how it looks very smooth here all around, and you finished your project for this technique of part 1. However, we're not done with part 1 yet. So now you're going to crochet all around it. So what you're going to do is, so pretend this is your bigger piece, okay? So this one right here, but I have it small right here. What you're going to do is you're going to crochet around this shorter edge, the long edge, and the short edge again. That way you have V's all the way around, because currently there's no V on the bottom and there's no V here on the short edges, only on the top. So what you want to do is make sure there's all V's all around it. Now here's the important part, okay? You're going to crochet 5 single crochets evenly on this side. Then you're going to do 30 on the bottom. So you have these loops here, so it's going to be easy to do. So just go through those loops. And by the way, there's no additional stitches here in the corner, okay? It's 5 here, 30 on the bottom, and 5 here. Once you reach this point, you finished your first round, okay? Even though you didn't do this part, but it already has the V, so we're not redoing this part. So then right here is where then the next round will start, okay? So what that means is once you've done that around and counting the other long edge as well, you're going to have 70 stitches for the first round, okay? Once you crochet all the way around, and remember you have 30 stitches right here and 5 over here and over here, which makes it 70 stitches. I have a small swatch because it's easier to see on camera. So once you're finished, you're going to slip stitch to the very first stitch, which is technically the last stitch over there, right? So you're going to use your invisible slip stitch because it makes it cleaner. So what I did is simply put my hook from the back to the front. Now I'm wrapping my loop around it and pulling it back. And now readjust just to make sure my hook is properly in place. So now we're going to do linked crochet. So linked crochet, and in specific we're using the double crochet version, so linked double crochet. You're going to chain 2, and instead of doing a yarn over first, you're inserting your hook into the second chain from the hook, and now you're doing the yarn over and pulling through, therefore linking it. By the way, that chain of 2 does not count as a stitch. Now insert into the first stitch, and then you have now your 3 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through, yarn over, pull through. So you have your first linked double crochet done. Now you have that horizontal bar. So if you look at it, you can see it's a horizontal bar right there. That's where you're inserting your hook into. Now yarn over and pull through. This is your yarn for the double crochet. Then insert your hook into the stitch. You have your 3 loops. Finish it like a double crochet. Now you're going to do that all the way around. And then I'm going to show you a little trick on how to do a connection to the very first stitch, because you're going to do a slip stitch, but you don't want a gap. So I'll show it to you. Let me finish my round and you're going to do your round. So for the very last stitch, what you're going to do in order to connect it and do the slip stitch automatically, you're going to go into your horizontal bar, yarn over and pull through, go into your stitch, yarn over, pull through, and now you're going to work it up by connecting it to the very first stitch. So How is that going to look like? So here's your very first stitch, right? So you're going to insert your hook into that horizontal bar of the very first stitch. Now yarn over, pull through that loop and through the 2 loops here that were on the hook, okay? So you went through 3 loops in total, okay? So like this. Now you're going to insert your hook into the top of that first stitch, yarn over, pull through, and pull through the last 2 loops on your hook. So now you have it connected. They're automatically connected and you actually don't have to do a slip stitch. So at this point, you're just going to chain 2 and then start your next round. You're going to do 4 rounds in total. So already did 1 round, so there's 3 more to go. So go ahead and do that. That is part 1 of the mystery crochet along. So we started with 2 techniques already. You started with the thermal crochet stitch and then we did the linked double crochet stitch. So now you already learned 2 different techniques, but don't you worry, we have a few more techniques coming up. So get ready for part 2 once you finish this project, and make sure to post it into my Facebook group, Crocheting with Nikki. Remember, the written pattern with ads is on my website. If you prefer having this pattern without ads, come join the Crochet Club, which we also call TCC. In the Crochet Club is a vault and you will see all my patterns ad-free. So if you prefer that version, come join my membership. If you're watching this video past November 2022, you will see a video pop up here on the right side, which is the next video for this pattern, which is part 2. For everyone else, I hope to see you for part 2 when it's available. I'll see you then. Bye!